Welcome in, welcome back to another very, very special episode of the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog, where we examine, discuss, celebrate, and honor all things college football across the entire college football landscape, but with a very special emphasis on our beloved black and gold squads of the Lsu Tigers and the Iowa Hawkeyes. Welcome back to the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. I'm your usual host, Blair Parks. Holla at you, boy. It's great to be back here with you. And as promised, for those of you who turned in to last week's episode, which was episode 1 of 2 of my Power 5 conferences, previews, and predictions, today I bring you episode 2 of 2 to complete my previews and predictions of the Power 5 conferences. I'll be bringing you today the SEC and the Big Ten. I wanted to do these last to give them a little bit of extra time, just because those are the two conferences that our black and gold squads compete within. So thank you for everything you've done for the show. It's great to be back with you. And I have a very special announcement, which I'm sure all of you college football fanatics are already aware of this, but in case you've forgotten, in case you haven't been paying much attention, or maybe you've been caught up with this or that, life does happen, but the season is nigh. It is now upon us. That is right. Ragnarok has begun. We have games this weekend that matter. Week 0 is upon us. So to commemorate this big happening, at the end of my previews for the SEC and the Big Ten, I'm going to give you a very quick and short preview of the upcoming games during Week 0, but primarily really just one game that I do need to talk about. Other than that, I cannot believe the season is here. We are weeks away, days away from our favorite teams kicking off. It is the most wonderful time of the year, and I'm so excited. I can't hide it. My blood's boiling, my heart's pumping. I got goose skin, and I guess my guy Dieter from SNL probably said it the best. I feel like a little girl. I am so excited. But hey, no need to worry. This is not the time on the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog when we dance. I would not want to put you guys through that. You already have to deal with looking at this for 35, 40 minutes. That's punishment enough. No need to see me dance. And before I proceed any further, as always, thank you for all you've done for the channel and what you will continue to do. Without you, none of this is possible for me to be here with you, sharing my love and passion for college football. Views, likes, shares, subscriptions, comments, everything is trending up. No thanks to you. So thank you for everything, the support, your love, the outpouring. And please, let's continue to spread the word out there. And as always, I always encourage any sort of involvement from you, the Black and Gold family, and all college football fans alike. Please comment. Let me know what you think, whether you agree or disagree with my opinions. Have I gotten something incorrect? Have I left something out? Please feel free to let me know. I always encourage it, but just keep it clean. Let's all act like adults. That's all I ask. So without further ado, let's get to it. And before I do this, pay attention. I'm going to do the SEC preview and prediction first. Am I going to choose Missouri to shock the world and be the chaos or surprise team in the SEC East? During my Big Ten preview and prediction, am I going to yet again predict Iowa to win the Big Ten West and get us back to the Rose Bowl like I'm sporting here today, my Rose Bowl shirt? Just tune in and wait and see. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's do it. So I'm going to start off with the SEC. SEC. Thought I'd give it a shot. Not really me, but the SEC brethren and sisters, I'm with you. Much love, much respect. So I'm going to go ahead and start off in the SEC West. So breaking down the SEC West, how I see it, I believe it's going to be a 3-team race for the division title between alphabetically Alabama, Mississippi State, and Texas A&M. So let's go ahead and start off with, and these numbers are going to reflect the AP poll rankings which came out last week. Let's start off with the number 1 team in the land, Alabama. And they are a legitimate playoff contender of mine. So to summarize Alabama this season, they have 12 starters returning from the defending SEC championship team last year, including last year's Heisman Trophy winner, quarterback Bryce Young. Also, the defense is the name of the game, I believe, for the Tide this year. They have such a studly linebacker core led by one of my 4 Heisman Trophy finalists, Will Anderson Jr., on that vaunted Alabama linebacker core. That's right. Earlier, a few episodes ago, my 2022 bold predictions. If you haven't watched that episode, I absolutely encourage you to watch it. I don't think you'll like it. I know you'll love it. And I give you my predictions, for example, the Heisman Trophy finalists, my playoff field, and some other interesting and very bold predictions. So, Will Anderson Jr., I definitely expect him to be one of the Final 4 at the New York City Athletic Club on Heisman Trophy Day. And also, joining Will Anderson Jr. is Henry To'o. I mean, this guy's an absolute stud, too. He transferred in 2 years ago from Tennessee and has been an absolute force right there in the middle as well for Alabama. Now, the only question mark, or I should say the biggest question mark I have for Alabama to stay at the summit, to win the division, once again, like they did last season, win the SEC championship potentially, get back to the playoff, is having to replace their wide receiver core, But then again, they are Alabama. I mean, Alabama is one of the very few halves that recruit at an absolute different level, different sport, different universe than everybody else. So it really potentially is just plug and play. I mean, they have, 4 and 5 star recruits, that just basically next man up. So I don't expect a lot of talent drop off, but maybe production from that Alabama wide receiver core. But we'll see how quickly they get up to speed through reps, practice, camp. We'll see. But I think that might be at times who is going to be that main go-to target for Alabama. Now, via the schedule, I mean, they have a tough road to a division title. They do host Texas A&M, who is ranked number 6 in the AP poll, and Mississippi State. But they travel to Tennessee and to their hated rival, LSU, there in Death Valley. Now, the Tennessee game is a big game for me. Once again, referring back to my bold predictions episode, I did pick Alabama to lose at least one regular season game, and that game to me is going to happen at Tennessee at Knoxville on Rocky Top during the season. So that's a big game. The Tennessee-Bama game, huge for my bold predictions. So their schedule is not the toughest, but it's definitely not an easy path to the division title. So we'll see how that plays out for the Tide. Next is Mississippi State, and I think they are going to have a very good season. A team that is kind of under the radar for a lot of folks. And I expect a ton more cowbell down there in Starkville. And also, to me, Mississippi State is one of my really dark horse playoff contenders. I mean, they have the personnel, but their schedule, as you'll see here shortly, absolutely brutal. The SEC offices did not do them any favors via their schedule. So how things play out here for the Bulldogs? I think it is going to be, once again, a breakout season for this squad, especially under the helm of the Riverboat Gambler himself, Coach Mike Leach. They returned 16 starters. That is a ton of experience, a lot of depth coming back for them. And they do potentially have one of, if not the best quarterback in the SEC. Hey, no offense to Bryce Young, but Will Rogers, who still has not met a man he doesn't ever like. Last year he threw for 4,739 yards with a 34-9 TD to INT ratio. So Will Rogers is back leading this air raid type offense. So I expect really good things out of this. They are a senior-laden team, especially on the defensive front seven. And that really is going to be the pivotal area for the Bulldogs, is can that defense make enough stops? Can they get the opposition off the field? We all know that their offense is going to put up points. We know that. It just comes down to how much can their defense slow the opponents. That is my biggest concern for this squad. Other than that, you look at their schedule, absolutely the toughest road to a division title. They do host Texas A&M and Georgia, but they have to go on the road at LSU, at Alabama, and at Kentucky. So a very tough schedule. Now that Georgia game, once again referring back to more of my bowl predictions, I did predict in that episode that Georgia's regular season loss, at least they would lose one game, and it would come at the hands of the Bulldogs in Starkville. So I expect a big game for Mississippi State against Georgia when that time comes in the season. And finally, the last team I believe that has a legitimate chance to win the division is the Texas A&M Aggies, who come in ranked at number 6 in the AP poll. Following the number 1 recruiting class in the nation this past year, there are high expectations in College Station for the Aggies and for Coach Jimbo Fisher. They return only 9 starters, though. Key losses, they have a ton of attrition, lots of loss along both lines of scrimmage, both on the O-line and the D-line. And also, who's their quarterback? It really is at this point kind of an unproven position for them. Who is going to be the signal caller, the primary signal caller moving forward for the Aggies? Now, their ceiling is high, really based on their potential, the talent, the star power that they have, if they can harness that early and if they can make it work. But it comes down to how quickly do these freshmen, which that's what they still are. I mean, don't forget that they might be 5 stars, top 10 guys, cats, but still they're freshmen. They have to go through that learning curve. How quickly can they make that transition to college ball? That's the concerns I have for this A&M squad. But I really think that they're still going to be at least 1 year away. I think come this time next year, I might have them a little bit higher up on my pecking order in that division. But via the schedule, between the three teams in the SEC West, they do have the easiest road to a division title. They host LSU, but they travel to Mississippi State and Alabama. So they don't play Georgia or Kentucky or Tennessee from the SEC East. So they catch a little bit break there, do the Aggies, via the schedule. Now, my chaos or potentially surprise team in the SEC West, don't sleep on the LSU Tigers under new head coach Brian Kelly. They've lost a lot of talent, a lot of transfers out, but some transfers in. But make no mistake, Brian Kelly, whether you're a fan of him or not, is an excellent coach. And he also has, the best newfound Southern accent that I've ever seen very quickly. So he's got those things going for him. I mean, don't forget, he is the winningest coach all time at Notre Dame. I mean, not Newt Rockne, but that belongs to Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. Now, via their schedule, they do host Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Alabama. They do travel to College Station to take on Texas A&M. So they're going to have their opportunities to knock off some of the top dogs in the SEC Conference. So keep an eye out for LSU. You never know. Now, Let's move to the SEC East, where our Lsu Tigers compete within that division. When I look at this division, it's really, to me, going to be just a two-team race. Now, that being said, I think it will be a little bit more competitive than last year. Last year, Georgia absolutely ran away with it. They could run and hide, put it in cruise control, basically week 7 or 8 after that, not worry about anything. So I think other teams will close the gap, but I still think it's going to come down to two teams. And alphabetically, those teams are Georgia and Tennessee. So let's start off with number 3, Georgia, who absolutely, Georgia's one of my playoff contenders. 10 starters return for the defending national champions. Can the magic of Stetson Bennett, the former walk-on quarterback down there in Athens, can this Cinderella All-American story continue? Kind of the guy who came out of the crowd and now has led them and won a national title. And plus, he's got a great cologne as well, if you remember old Stetson. Some things never go out of style, if you ask me. So can this continue? Can the magic of this man, the story he has written on the college football landscape, continue? Time will tell. They really have to replace a lot of attrition and loss along that defense due to the graduation of a lot of that talent for graduation and to the NFL. But like Alabama, Georgia is one of those very few halves that do recruit at the upper echelon, in the upper stratosphere, at a different level than other programs, especially Iowa being a developmental program. So Georgia does have the capability to simply plug and play, but once again, how quickly can those newbies hit the ground running, get the reps and the speed to make an immediate impact? That's the one thing to watch for this Georgia defense. Via the schedule, they have an easier road to a division title compared to Tennessee. They do host Tennessee, and they travel to Mississippi State and Kentucky. So they don't play Alabama, they don't play A&M, they don't play LSU. So they really catch a break, do the Bulldogs this season. Now, the second team in the SEC East that I believe can make a lot of noise is the Tennessee Volunteers, and they are another one of my dark horse playoff contenders. They have 14 starters returning from last year's team, and the name of the game for this squad is two things: pace and space on offense. These guys are full throttle all the time, points aplenty for that offense. And the composer of this offense is one of my 4 Heisman Trophy finalist picks. Quarterback Hendon Hooker is back to lead the offense moving forward. The linebacker core behind Alabama, to me, is the best or one of the best linebacker cores in all of the SEC, led by Jeremy Banks, who led last year's squad in both tackles and tied for the lead in sacks as well. And as you can tell, I am very high on this Tennessee squad. I really am a believer in what they are capable of. Now, via the schedule, they do have the tougher road to a division title than Georgia. They do host Alabama and Kentucky, but they travel to LSU and Georgia. So their schedule is going to be tough. They are absolutely going to be challenged. And if they want to win that division, they're going to have to earn it. Now, my chaos-causing or potential surprise team in the SEC East is the number 20 Kentucky Wildcats. They are ranked, I get it, but I'm just not as high on this squad. I think due to losses, I just don't know where their big play capability is going to come from. And they did lose a lot on both lines of scrimmage, offense and defensive line. But I think they still will be a tough team out. They'll be a tough team to beat. Via Kentucky schedule, they host Georgia and Mississippi State, and they travel to Tennessee. So if they win one or two of those games, could really change the entire outcome and makeup of the SEC conference. So now, as I did on last week's episode, when I get done going through these conferences, I will give you my 2 biggest conference games of the year, and then we'll tell you who I think will meet up in the conference championship game. So in the SEC, the 2 biggest conference games that I see, that I predict, they both will actually be on the same day. So what a great day to lounge around, kick back, grab your favorite snack, and watch some football. On November 5th, the one is Alabama travels to LSU to take on their rival. And once again, LSU has a potential to be a surprise team in that division, but this is going to be a huge measuring stick for both Alabama and LSU, because I believe both of them have the week off to prepare for that big rivalry game. And also that day on the 5th of November, Tennessee travels to Georgia, which is a game that could potentially figure in the overall outcome of the SEC East. So, who do I like to meet up in the SEC title game? First of all, from the West, I absolutely like Alabama to advance. I think they will be pushed. I believe they will have at least one regular season loss. That was another one of my bold predictions from that episode. I did say that I believe going into conference championship weekend, we will have 0 undefeated teams at the FBS level. So I do like Alabama out of the West. And as I look at the pick that I have right here in front of me, I have picked here who I believe is going to win the SEC East. But this is one that I've wavered on. I've gone back and forth. And if the schedules were more evenly balanced, I absolutely would feel better about taking this team compared to the other. But I think one just has such a tougher uphill to climb than the other via the schedule. It's tough for me to pull the trigger, because I know who I have down here winning, but right now, I don't want to be the one who says later on, I told you guys so, or man, I wish I would have picked them. I wanted to. I don't want to be that guy. So in front of you, I'm going to let it ride. I'm going to call an audible really quick. Hut, hut, check, check, check. I'm calling an audible, and I'm just going to ride with it. I'm high on this team. That's right. I am picking the Tennessee Volunteers to win the SEC East Division this season. I think they will dethrone the Bulldogs, but it comes down to this. Georgia has to get at least 2 losses. So can that happen? Anything's possible, but I don't know. That's going to be the key thing. I think Tennessee will lose at least 1 game, but it comes down to what's the tiebreaker and total number of conference losses. So keep your eye on that, but I'm just going to roll. I'm going to roll the dice. 7-11. 7-11. I'm doing it. Alabama versus Tennessee in the SEC title game, and I like Alabama coming out on top. So that's how I see the SEC playing out. Please feel free, like, share, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. You agree, disagree, think I'm an absolute Looney Tune? Let me know. I'm a big boy. I can take it. And as you've seen, if you've watched previous episodes, anybody who shares legit comments, I will absolutely do what I can to address those during the episodes. At least I will give you a shout out for your support. So let me know what you think about my SEC preview and predictions. Moving on, last but certainly not least, let's move into the Big Ten for my Big Ten Conference preview and prediction. Let me get a quick swig of water. So let's start off in the highly contested Big Ten East. Now we know this division is always the bear. If I look at this, I see this being a 3-team race, and one of these teams might be a little bit of a shock to you. So those teams being, in alphabetical order, Maryland, that's right, the Terps, Maryland, Michigan, and the Ohio State, spelled THOSE. The Ohio State University, okay? The, being THE, whatever, moving on. So let's look at Maryland. That's right. I am very high on this team. They do have 15 starters returning. That's a legitimate number. And they do have I believe he is at least a top 20, if not maybe a top 15 quarterback in the nation. Quarterback Talia Tagovailoa. He leads a circus of skill positions. That's right. A circus. He leads a circus of skill position players and potentially the best wide receiver core in the Big Ten. I mean, that's not a shot at Ohio State, and I'll get to them in a little bit, but the playmakers he has back at his disposal at the skill positions are going to be legit. So I expect big numbers offensively and yardage, touchdowns from the quarterback and the Maryland offense. The big question mark, very similar to Mississippi State, when you are so much more dependent on one unit, one phase of your football team being offense compared to defense, you're potentially playing with fire, Scarecrow. And that's the concern I have for this Maryland squad is can their defense make the occasional stop? Can they get the other team's offense off the field? I mean, I think this offense could score 30, 35 points a game. I think they're capable of that. But are they going to be able to give up that many? I mean, that's a big concern for me. I mean, they've got to get it right. They got to strap it up and tighten it up there, that defense there for Maryland. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to, is their defense. Now, via the schedule, they have the toughest road to a division title based on the three contenders. They host Purdue and Ohio State, but they travel to Michigan, to Wisconsin, to Penn State. Yikes. That is an uphill climb for the squad, but we'll have to wait and see how it plays out there for the Terps. Next is number 8, Michigan, and they are one of my playoff contenders. Michigan returns 11 starters from last year's squad, and they still are the defending Big Ten champions. I think people have really kind of forgotten that. They all forgot about Dre. Because one thing that's tough for me to really kind of figure out is returning 11 starters, including their quarterback, Cade McNamara. I have never seen anything like this happen. That even though they have all of that back, they defeated Ohio State last season, they made a run to the playoffs, that still Ohio State was a unanimous pick to win the Big Ten. I've never seen that ever. I mean, I think it's a little far-fetched. I think this team is not getting much love whatsoever. I think people have really just basically written them off, forgotten about them, but I have not. I still think this team is very dangerous, and quite frankly, if they go into that game, Thanksgiving weekend, undefeated, or maybe one loss against an undefeated or one-loss Ohio State team, I think whoever wins that game is going to win the Big Ten championship and will get to the playoffs. Or the other thing I could see happen, let's say my bold prediction about everybody having one loss is incorrect, and let's say Michigan comes into that game with one loss, Ohio State is undefeated, Michigan beats them again, they go on to the Big Ten title, bring it home. I think then both Michigan and Ohio State will get to the college football playoff. So we're looking at potentially 2 teams from the Big Ten. It's that pencil thin. I think a lot of it just comes down to the non-conference schedule and a chance to get a big-time non-conference win, which I'll get to that here a little bit. Why I'm a little bit concerned about this Michigan team, though, from that aspect. You know what to get. You know what to expect. You're going to get a lot of ground and pound, the physicality. Hardball ball is here to stay, and it's back at Michigan. It paid dividends last season. I think they're going to continue to do that. But now they are the hunted, not the hunter, and how are they going to respond? especially, like I said, knowing that everybody and their mother or two mothers believe that Ohio State is the best team in the conference. The thing is, too, another reason why it's kind of a head scratcher for me, why, this team has been completely written off, is when you look at the two deep from last year, even though they lost some big-time names to the NFL, Aiden Hutchinson, David Ajabo, they did lose a lot of guys who are uber talents, but they still returned the most two deep people roster from last season. So they have really, in the way, the most experience returning, just not the most starters in our league, in the league of the Big Ten. So, yeah, I don't know. This is going to be a tough race. My biggest concern for them is just that their schedule. And I mean that not that it's difficult, because they have the easiest route to a division title. I mean, their non-conference schedule is soft. And I mean Charmin soft. They have, I believe, Hawaii, Colorado State, and UConn. I mean, when's the last time you saw Michigan's schedule like that? But as far as the conference schedule, via their schedule, they host Maryland and Penn State. They host Maryland, Penn State, and they travel to Iowa and Ohio State. So it's really going to be a two-game schedule, I believe, for Michigan this year. The game at Iowa and at Ohio State. So we'll see how that plays out for the Wolverines. Next is number 2, Ohio State, who also is a playoff contender for me. They have 11 returning starters from last year's Rose Bowl winning squad, including one of my Heisman Trophy finalists, quarterback C.J. Stroud. Now, Stroud to wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba. This is going to be a big-time combo. You're going to hear this combination a lot during the season, basically along the same lines as peanut butter and jelly, spaghetti and meatballs, peas and carrots, like Forrest Gump said, or like the delivery driver said in Big Daddy, lamb and tuna fish. You're going to hear this a lot. Jackson Smith from C.J. Stroud and vice versa. So they do have offensive weapons aplenty. I mean, this team is going to be very explosive. My biggest concern is their defense. So they did try to address this issue in the offseason. They bring in former Oklahoma State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, who definitely brought them back. That Oklahoma State defense was the calling card last year. But when you look at his last two stops, the first year at Oklahoma State and at Duke before that, the defenses actually got a little bit worse. So it's usually a scheme that takes a couple seasons to take hold of and grasp. So I'm concerned about this. And if you look at the arching theme, something that we have seen the last few seasons, and this is something that they need to break this, is that Ohio State defense has vastly underperformed. With the talent they have, they still have continued to really struggle, especially against teams that are physical. That's really what happened last year in their two losses to both Oregon and Michigan. They just got absolutely abused and dominated along the lines of scrimmage, beat at the point of attack and could not hold it. So I'm concerned about this Ohio State defense. I really am. And we'll see. We'll see if the hire of Jim Knowles rights the ship. Only time will tell. Now, via their schedule, they have a tough road to a division title. Their schedule, they do host Wisconsin and Iowa, and they also host Michigan. So they get those three really good teams at home, but they travel to Penn State and to Maryland. So not a cakewalk, but definitely not as difficult as Maryland's path to a division title. Now, my chaos-causing under-the-radar team, I got to go with the Penn State Nittany Lions. I think Penn State really, to me, could be last year's Michigan. I think this team could really surprise win 8, 9, 10 games. But to me, I can't get past the fact of the last 2 years, they are 11-11 overall. It's hard for me to look past that. And much like Ohio State, the repeating theme there for them has been issues along the offensive line. They have not been able to protect their quarterbacks, to open up any running lanes. Their rushing attack has really been non-existent. I am very concerned about this, like I am concerned about the reoccurring theme for the Ohio State defense is what's that Penn State offensive line going to do? That's what I'm concerned with. That's why, surprisingly to some of you, I could not put them as one of my main contenders for that division. No disrespect, that's just how I see it. Their schedule, they do host Minnesota, Ohio State, and Maryland, but they do travel to Michigan. So they're going to have a shot at some of the Big Ten heavyweights. So we'll see what Penn State can do. Next is the Big Ten West, which I think will also be very highly contested. The division of our Iowa Hawkeyes. Let's see how I see this division playing out. I think it's going to be a 4-team race. That's right. I think 4 teams potentially could hoist the division trophy at the end of the season. Just like I think there's 4 teams that legitimately could win the ACC Atlantic Division. Those 4 teams in alphabetical order, I have Iowa, Minnesota, Purdue, and Wisconsin. So let's start off with our Hawkeyes. 14 starters return from last year's Big Ten West champion team. Now, I expect their defense to be really, really good. And I think even this year, they might be a better version of themselves from last year's defense, which led the entire country in interceptions, takeaways, turnover ratio. I mean, just an epic defense last year. But that's really what we've gotten used to being Iowa fans. This is, right now, the Iowa defense, they've gone 6 years allowing, on average, less than 20 points a game. Tops in the country. And I do expect this to be, at the end of the season, a 7th year when that will happen. I mean, this defense is going to be good. I have no issues with the defense, especially now they're a year older along the defensive line. If they can just get in there and wreak havoc a little bit more on opposing quarterbacks and let their stud linebacker core and defensive backfield do their thing, we can expect big things from this Hawkeye squad. Now, on that defense, you have 2 returning first-team All-Americans and linebacker Jack Campbell and cornerback Riley Moss, guys who are going to be leaders on that defense. Last year, the O-line struggled, but I think they can only be better. So I think the offensive line this year will be an area of benefit, a strength for the Iowa Hawkeyes. But the one thing that's tough for me, my concern, like it is for all of us Iowa fans, is that offense. I mean, what offense are we going to have? A new and improved offense, or the offense that ranked 121st last year out of 130 teams in total offense? Which offense is going to show up? I mean, I'm going to talk a lot more about Iowa's previous season. Next week, you could expect my Iowa preview and prediction episode for 2022. And I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with what plagued the Hawkeyes last season. Also, they lose 2 key arteries along the special teams, which, if you know Iowa football, they really depend on special teams so much more than most, if not any other team in the nation. The special teams is an absolute direct extension of their defense. They lose kicker Caleb Shudak to retirement, and in the offseason, stud kick returner, the Big Ten's best kick returner, as named last year, and wide receiver, my guy, Charlie Jones, transferred out. So they lose 2 keys in the special teams realm. Also, their schedule, it's the toughest road to a division title. They host Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nebraska, but they travel to Ohio State, to Purdue, to Minnesota. Tough sledding for the Hawkeyes. But we'll see what plays out. Now, next is Minnesota. Minnesota returns 13 starters, including quarterback Tanner Morgan, and he reunites, like Peaches and Herb, reunited and it feels so good. He's reunited with former offensive coordinator Kirk Ciarrocca, who was with Tanner Morgan in 2019 during that breakout season for both he and the Minnesota football program. They returned, and I like this team. I am high on this squad, and here's why. They returned the most 5th and 6th year seniors in the entire conference. So when you look at things, 3 aspects you always have to take into account when you're forecasting how a team may or may not do. Those 3 things are depth, experience, and schedule. And I think Minnesota has actually all 3 when it comes down to the Big Ten, and more specifically, the Big Ten West. They returned their entire wide receiver core and running back core. Biggest question mark for them is replacing that offensive line. I mean, they replaced basically everybody. This is a brand new unit for this team, and you know that's exactly what PJ Fleck wants to do. He wants to run the ball first and foremost, second and third, to set up that play-action passing. So that's my biggest concern for this Minnesota Golden Gopher squad. Via the schedule, they have the easiest path. Once again, schedule is easy. Easiest path to the division title. They host both Purdue and Iowa, and they travel to Penn State, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. So they do not play Ohio State or Michigan from the East Division. Next is Purdue. Purdue has 14 returning starters, including 9 on defense. And Purdue is really right now a very trendy pick to win the Big Ten West. And I understand why. Due to how they scheme on offense. I mean, this is a team that, it doesn't matter, who they return on offense. They're going to scheme, and they're going to put up points. I mean, just ask us Hawkeye fans about it. I mean, it just makes us absolutely sick to our stomachs. I mean, what the thorn in our side that Coach Jeff Brom has been since he's arrived at Purdue. So they're going to put up points. There's no doubt about it. But the issue has always been the defense. But they did improve a lot last season. And having 9 starters back, I expect they at least are going to maintain that level. They do need to replace wide receiver studs in David Bell and Milton Wright. But I already pointed it out. This team always is going to scheme well for the personnel they have. So I'm not too concerned. And plus, they picked up 2 of the Iowa receivers in the offseason. Tyrone Tracy Jr. transferred there, and so did my guy, Charlie Jones. And plus, I think they're going to have a lot of momentum after their bowl victory last season over Tennessee in Nashville. Basically a Tennessee home game, and their 2 best players in wide receiver David Bell and defensive end George Karlaftis did not play. Tennessee threw everything at them because they really wanted to win that game, and Purdue prevailed in overtime. That was a classic bowl game. Now, via their schedule, they do have a little bit of an easier path to a division title. They do host Penn State, Iowa, and Nebraska, but they travel to Minnesota, Maryland, and Wisconsin. So they also don't play Ohio State or Michigan. Next is number 18, Wisconsin. What can Bucky and the Badgers do this season? They return only 8 starters, only 3 on defense, and I'm very concerned about that. But can they retool and reset their defense? They've proven us that they can. I mean, DC, Jim Leonard, I think at some point very soon he will be a head coach at a major program. I do think he will reset and retool. So I don't expect a lot of drop-off from the Wisconsin defense, but there will be a little bit of a drop-off. That's my main concern for this squad. It is. And also, will the roller coaster ride called quarterback Graham Mertz continue? Because he has been so inaccurate and very inconsistent. but maybe this is the year that he brings it all together for the Badgers. But you know what? This team has the identity and a culture. And if you haven't met him yet, I will introduce to you Nebraska's next great running back is sophomore Braylon Allen. That's right. He's only a sophomore, young stud, young pup. So unfortunately, Hawkeye fans, we're going to see him for a few more years. We just are, unfortunately. Unless he wants to opt to leave early for the NFL. Now, Wisconsin, via their schedule, they do have a tough road to a division title, but not as tough as Iowa's. They do host Purdue, Maryland, and Minnesota, but they do travel to Ohio State, Nebraska, and Iowa. So we'll see. We'll see what the schedule does for the Badgers. The chaos-causing potential surprise team in the Big Ten West is Nebraska, but I'm not as high on this team that a lot of other people are. My bowl predictions episode, I predicted that they will win enough games to keep Scott Frost employed as the head coach, but I don't see any more than 7 wins. I just don't. But I think they'll be better, maybe knock off a couple of the upper echelon, but we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think they're a legitimate contender in that division. And they do host Minnesota and Wisconsin. They travel to Purdue, Michigan, and Iowa. So they're going to have their opportunities to do exactly that. Now, my 2 conference games of the year in the Big Ten, one is on October 1st. Purdue travels to Minnesota. And then the last game of the year, the game, as it should be, on November 26th, Michigan travels to Ohio State, and that game not only has division implications, but absolute playoff implications as well. So those are my 2 conference games of the year in the Big Ten. Now, who do I like to meet up in the Big Ten title game? In the East, I'm going to go with the team I think is the best team in the conference. I think it will be the best offense in the nation. I'm going with Ohio State to buck Michigan this year to get back to the title game. I like the Buckeyes from the East. And if you watch my bowl predictions show, because of those 3 factors, depth, experience, and schedule, that's right, I'm taking Minnesota to win the Big Ten West Division. And if Minnesota has a really good season, and let's say they come into the Big Ten title game with 1, maybe 2 losses, and Ohio State wins and maybe goes to the college football playoff, which I think they are and will, then the Rose Bowl, more than likely, is going to take Minnesota. And that'll break the drought for the longest team that has not been to the Rose Bowl in the Big Ten Conference. And you know damn well the whole state of Minnesota will travel out to Pasadena. So Minnesota to the Rose Bowl, we'll have to wait and see. I would not be surprised or shocked. So the Big Ten title game, Minnesota versus Ohio State. I've already kind of referred to it. I like Minnesota, but I like Ohio State a whole hell of a lot more. I like Ohio State winning the Big Ten conference title. So that's my predictions and previews for the SEC and the Big Ten. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. Quickly, so we do have a big-time game this weekend in Week 0 across the pond from Dublin, Ireland at 11:30 is the kickoff here, Central Standard Time in the Show Me State. Nebraska and Northwestern square off. Big game right out of the gate. Now, will Irish eyes be smiling for Nebraska coach Scott Frost? This is a game Nebraska will win and needs to win. They have to win this game. And also, another one of my bold predictions is up against it right out of the gate. I predicted that Northwestern would go winless in conference. So if they somehow end up winning this game, then one of my bold predictions is already kaput. So I do think Nebraska will win this game because I do believe they have more talent. I think they're a better team. But this is a game they have to have. If they lose this game, it would not be so surprising if, to me, Nebraska just told embattled Coach Scott Frost, he is living on a prayer right now, as Bon Jovi once said. you know what, Coach, don't worry about coming back with a team. Just find your own way back home. It could come down to that if they lose. Right now, Nebraska's favored by 13 points. I don't know if I like all that spread, but the total for points is 50 and a half. So I would definitely take the under 51 points. I don't think there's going to be 51 points scored in this game. That's just my quick take. So I do expect Nebraska to win the game in Ireland this weekend. Kind of a little bonus pick there for you. So what's on tap? Next week, very special episode. I've already brought it up. Next week, I am coming to you with my 2022 Iowa football preview and prediction episode. And also, I'm going to have my Week 1 Pick'em segment, everybody's favorite segment of the show. And I'm going to be taking the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog on the road. I'm taking it to the streets, like the Doobie Brothers said. And I will be on site, on scene someplace else with a very special guest who's going to join me for those 2 episodes next week. So until then, thank you very much as always for your attention, your time, your support. Until next week, I wish all of you peace, progress, and prosperity as always. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the football this weekend. Until next week, take care of yourselves, and thank you for tuning in on today's very special episode of the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.